Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today I'm going to be paying very special happy birthday wishes to Eric Scott, who plays Ben Walton. So thank you for joining me to help celebrate Eric's birthday. Besides all of the years of working together, Eric and I are we were both born in the same year, so he's just, basically 9 months younger than I am. And so we have pretty much grown up together and experienced all of the same phases of our lives at the same time. And of course, it all started during the homecoming. And we all had such a wonderful time. I've talked about that multiple times. And we bonded because we were basically the same age, and some of the others were a little younger. And although I bonded with all of them, those of us who were closest in age originally sort of, I think, hung out a bit more together because although Mary a little later became one of my best friends, at that point I was 13 and she was 10. And there's a big difference between being a teenager and being 10. So it took a while before that relationship came up onto more of an even keel. But Eric and I could relate to the same things all through it. And we were also, when we were in school, I think he was a grade behind me because I started probably earlier. Well, back when I started school, you could start either in, I think, February or in September. And I started midterm. And then there was a point where they wanted to put everybody on the same school year. So those of us who had started at the midterm basically had a choice to either stay back and repeat the first half of the grade or go ahead a half a year and move up to the next grade. So I moved up, and I think Eric probably started in September because of his birthday being in October. And so he was just that year behind me when I moved up. So I graduated from high school at the studio basically a season before he did. But otherwise, we were very much two peas in a pod in terms of being on track together. Besides hanging out at the studio together, we also met up at times. He talked about remembering both riding our bikes to meet up someplace in between where our two houses were. He grew up in Canoga Park. I grew up in Van Nuys. And so we'd kind of pick some place in the middle and meet up and just hang out and stuff like that. Plus all of the sort of publicity events that we did together, whether it was parades or the opening of the W.C. Fields exhibit at the Wax Museum, or we did a publicity thing together in, I think it was Denver, Colorado, and we were both not quite 18, and we both have an older sibling. So my sister went as my guardian because she was already 18, and Eric's older brother, Alan, went as his guardian. So it was really kind of like four teenagers hanging out together, but it met all of the qualifications. So we were good to go. And we were all grown up enough at that point that we didn't really need babysitting. It was just for legal purposes. So I remember doing that event together, and just a lot of different things, and the sports, the softball team the Waltons had, and we competed together on some celebrity sports competition where we didn't do very well, the Walton team, but we had a lot of fun. Eric was one of the other members of the cast who was more athletic. Mary was athletic. Cammie, not so much. David, not so much. John, not really. And Richard never participated in those things. So it was really kind of some of us, and even I think on the series when you would see us playing ball games in the front yard, that you can kind of tell who can actually throw and catch and who can't. So just more similarities there. Subsequently, along with our spouses, we have been to dinner together any number of times. We're both, Dodger fans. And so we've gone to Dodger games together. My husband's not so much a baseball person, although he gets to know it because of me, but he hasn't been to any games with us. But we'll go, and we'll usually take Leslie Winston, who played his wife Cindy. The four of us are kind of big Dodger fans, and we'll go to games together. And in fact, when we were in Illinois doing an event a couple of years ago, we happened to be there at a point where we were able to go to a game at Wrigley Stadium, and the Dodgers happened to be playing the Cubs. So it was sort of perfect. So Eric, Leslie, his wife Cindy, and me went to a game at Wrigley Stadium, which was really pretty special. We had a great time. Such an iconic stadium. So that was pretty special. And then we have celebrated birthdays together. We went to the theater one night for my birthday, along with another friend of ours. And so we had dinner and then went to see a theater production. Yeah, so we've done things like that. And I have spoke earlier in the year about the fact that Eric and Cindy and my husband Bob and I went on a river cruise earlier this year in Europe. So we had a lot of fun doing that together and spending that time traveling. So we have done that as well. And then, of course, there's always family events, whether it's weddings or birthdays or baby showers or bar mitzvahs, all those sorts of family events. Sadly, funerals sometimes, or just gatherings when we get together as a cast. So lots of those types of shared events as well. I don't know if all of you have seen the home movies that I shared clips of that I came across when I was going through some of my mom's stuff, her various different videos and things. And one of them was Mark Studio. And so I had it transferred from whatever film format it was on to digital, and found that there was literally some footage at Warner Brothers Studio. This was very early on, probably 14, 15, something like that. And you see Eric and I catching up with each other outside of the Walton school trailer where we did our schoolwork outside the sound stage. And so that was kind of very fun to come across this real vintage footage of us from like 50 years ago. What I remember over the seasons with Eric is he's very extroverted. He can be very loud, and in the mornings in the makeup room where most of us were still, it was pretty quiet. We were still trying to wake up, things like that. And Eric would come in and the volume would just escalate. It's like, oh, Eric's here. He drove me absolutely crazy sometimes, but that was just the same sort of thing that you can have with siblings, where you can get on each other's nerves. And sometimes he drove me nuts, but I have grown to love him, as one of my best friends. There are a lot of fun characteristics to the character of Ben and things that Eric brought to that character. He could be a real tease in Grandma Comes Home, when he decided it would be funny to put Elizabeth's 4-H project pig into the baby stroller where I thought I had left John Curtis. And of course, I am none too happy to look in there and find that there is a baby pig rather than John Curtis, and I chase him around the yard. So more of the sibling dynamics between Mary Ellen and Ben in this case. I had a lot of fun in the episode The Go-Getter. I happened to observe Ben kissing his girlfriend goodbye at her car, and then I kind of stroll on up and tease him about it, and he sort of is talking about it. Well, this is just between us, right? And I just kind of smile, and he says, well, don't tell anyone. You know how the boys can be. And he says,
you won't tell Kurt, will you?
Not unless I talk in my sleep.
Well, you do talk in your sleep. I've heard you before.
It's okay. Kurt doesn't listen in his sleep.
Good.
I loved that little exchange. I thought that was so cute. And another fun scene to get to play with Eric. Like Mary Ellen, Ben could be very strong-willed, which is why he butted heads with Daddy so often. But he was also fiercely loyal, as we saw in the episode The Lie, when he has promised that he will not tell that he took Nancy into town and that he basically took John Boy's car to do it. He's not going to tell, even when the car is basically stolen for a little joyride and is brought back and has a dented fender, which when that comes out and Ben refuses to say what he was doing, who he was with, what it was all about, because Nancy made him promise, and he is honoring that promise. And ultimately he does tell because he realizes it'll be the best thing all around, but very loyal. Or in the episode The Intruders, when he has butted heads with Daddy and then he says, fine, I'm going to go find a job someplace else. He goes to work for a rival lumber company that is actually in competition with the Waltons to get a particular contract, who can deliver these logs first. And when Ben finds out that that's what's happening, that he is basically helping them try to beat his father's company, he quits, he said, and won't do it. So ultimately he's very loyal to the family and chooses to forego the money, the job, and even his personal upset with his father because of how his commitment to the family, basically. When Ben marries Cindy, they go head to head a few times. And in the first episode, The Outsiders, we have the famous scene after Cindy and Grandma have talked, and Grandma has basically given Cindy the broom and talked about how Grandpa was an old fool and Ben is a young fool. And she basically gives Cindy the broom to use on Ben if she needs to. And indeed, when Ben is giving her trouble, she does pull out that broom and get him in line. So Ben had to learn how to navigate yet another strong woman in his life. We saw another side of Ben in the burnout when he ended up, for whatever reason, housing with Yancey Tucker. Nobody understood why he didn't also go to the Baldwins or someplace else. Yancey? But it made for a good storyline, and I'm sure that's the reason it was done, because they could have some fun there. So seeing Ben hanging out with Yancey and getting into trouble was cute. It was another side of Ben. As a character and as himself, Eric was very brave. In the episode The Ferris Wheel, Ben is the one who climbs up the Ferris wheel to rescue Elizabeth. And Eric said that he did almost that entire stunt himself, that he climbed pretty much up to the top. And I think they might have had a stunt double for just a piece of it or whatever. But then I think they came in tighter. But Eric was the one who predominantly climbed that Ferris wheel. So kudos to him. I'm sure I would have done it if I had to, but it doesn't mean I would have wanted to. But Eric was right in there, and he was game, very coordinated, as I said, very athletic. Eric has also talked about how honored he felt to work with Beulah Bondi in the pony cart when she helps paint the pony cart and works with him on that, and that he was familiar with who she was. And he was the only one of us who actually asked her if she would sign a photo for him, and she did. And he has that as a very treasured keepsake. Just a handful of episodes and scenes and things that struck me that I remembered about Eric, and things that maybe I haven't talked about before as much. So I'm sure you all have your favorite episodes of Ben's. Please let me know what they are. And if Eric gets a chance to read some of these comments, he'll have a chance to see what you thought. I think over the seasons, he had an opportunity to do all kinds of wonderful storylines and beautiful work. So I hope you appreciate him as Ben Walton as much as I do, and as much as I do appreciate Eric Scott as a person. So thank you for joining me to wish Eric a very happy birthday. Thank you for joining me for this birthday segment for Eric Scott. If you enjoy these segments, please do hit like and subscribe, and even share them with other people you think are fans of the Waltons and might enjoy this content and learning a little more about behind the scenes. I will see you next time for more behind the scenes of the Waltons and more of your questions in another Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.